Plastic Blast. Yes.
Hey everybody, it's Deep Dive Zone, normal intro this time, a Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective series for fans of all shapes and sizes. I'm your host Evan, joined by my buddies Lauren and Bruce, and today we're doing some more Sonic the Hedgehog comics.
Did we have an abnormal intro last week?
I think so, I just did the wrestling intro first.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Today we are starting off with Sonic the Hedgehog number 41, and they're getting sucked into the Stranger Things Upside Down zone.
I guess it does kind of look.
Yeah, kind of.
I haven't watched Stranger Things, I have no idea what it looks like.
I have watched Stranger Things. I guess, sort of.
Alright, well, I'm glad that I could sort of get there. The story for this issue is, and one shall save him. There's no before part, it's just ... and one shall save him. It's not even capitalized. Written by Penders and drawn by Kyle Hunter, Sonic, Sally, and Jeffrey journey into the unstable zone of silence to neutralize it and save the king once and for all.
Yeah. And that's not in the summary that you just said, but they actually do save the king. Which
Yeah, they
is
successfully grab him.
surprising. Like, seems early.
It really does.
Well, we have a long way towards getting the king back sort of into his position that he was before the coup.
Fair. That is true.
Can we talk about the art in this issue?
I wanted to bring that up first thing. I don't hate it, but it is kind of weird.
It's messy. I'm looking at this first page here, and like the inking on Sonic is really bad, and on Robotnik it's like his face
It's
looks
like
like he,
strangely hyper-realistic. Not hyper-realistic, but pseudo-realistic.
he looks like he's rubbed his face with charcoal or something.
But like, you know, despite all that, I can't really bring myself to hate the art. I kind of like it.
There's some times when it looks okay, other times when it doesn't. It's super weird.
I think it's partially because it looks like it could pass off as official Sega arts. At least Sonic does.
I kind of think it just looks like it has a lot of the same tropes as like Pender's artwork, but is just a little bit better than Pender's.
Yeah, it's like if Penders actually knew how to draw.
But they basically start out, you know, breaking into Robotnik's base for what is Sonic trying to get here? Is he just doing it for fun?
Oh,
Just getting some intel, I think. Like
So-
stealing information on the zone or something or other. I don't remember.
All right.
we might as well be doing it for fun. I don't think they actually outright say what the intel he's looking for is, because he fucks with Robotnik and then leaves.
It wasn't information. It was a component
Oh,
for the neutralizer.
oh,
Rotor
right.
mentions it afterwards. I had to check over. Yeah.
it has been a couple weeks since I read this issue, so...
Well, and I think part of it is that Penders' writing is very wordy, but finding crucial details in that is really difficult.
It feels like overcompensating sometimes.
No, yeah, I think you could get the information across in much less.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, just look at some other stories.
sure.
One thing I do like some of the details, though. For instance, I like that as Sonic breaks in, Robotnik is like, "I'm not interested in roboticizing anymore," with reference to the whole Mecha Madness.
Yeah, Mecha Madness.
Mecha Madness arc. I like when the status quo sort of gets changed. I don't know if that stays, but I like for now they're acknowledging that like he's changing his tactics.
That makes sense. You know,
Well,
Sonic
and-
basically humiliated Robotnik by being de-roboticized. So
Yeah, he gets a little chance to like gloat about how Robotnik's kind of been having a hard time recently between Mecha Madness and like the earthquake.
yeah.
Right. That's true.
So
Mentions that.
yeah, I can't blame Robotnik being like, "I'm tired of this. I'm not here to take prisoners or roboticize you. I just want to kill you now."
Yeah, he's getting desperate, and that's what makes me think, I think this is probably as they were starting to set up number 50, which is Endgame.
Well, at the time, you may see it as set up for the next mini series. Actually, that Sonic
Yeah,
does.
it's
That's
also
fair,
set
yeah.
up for that as well. Well, because to be fair, Sonic Quest also does feel somewhat like set up for issue 50 as well. But
Penders likes his setups of setups.
Yeah, yes.
that is something I'll give him credit about. He likes to build things up.
It's just there was a line in some issue. I'd have to go back and check what it was. Where Robotnik is like, yes, we must continue the project or something. It's a very vague line, and I'm like, is he talking about issue 50? But it easily could have been talking about this, the miniseries as well. It's just funny how Penders, or I don't know if that was even Penders. I mean, it probably was.
I assume the different writers at this point have probably been talking to each other if they're planning something big.
A little bit, at least, yeah. But relative to this story, it's mostly just a follow-up to the Zone of Silence story from before, which makes me wonder why they even bothered before, because that was that last week or the week before that we did that one?
That was the beginning of last week, I think.
Yeah, so it's like you basically could have put these issues side by side, or even just made it one story.
Yeah, cut down some of the less useful stuff, some of the more wordy stuff. Well, so I think it would be better to still do them as two separate issues, but I do agree they would have been better one after another instead of having like 4 issues in between. 4 issues in between them.
I don't really mind it all that much.
It does help to give a sense of time.
I'll say it's an improvement over doing like a few pages of Knuckles nonsense at the end of an issue.
I don't think it's ever going to be that bad again.
Because Penders very much likes to split his stories up across issues. Yeah. And I'll give him credit. This comes off better than that.
Yes, it does.
So as we progress in the story, we get a look at the king. And he's like talking to frogs or something that are like begging for food, but he actually seems to like them. It's such a random thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be like, I'm trying to figure out, is he out of his mind and talking to things that don't actually talk back? Because we only see them respond from his perspective, but I don't know if Sonic and Sally can tell.
King Acorn is kind of on the loopy side right now. But there's other reasons for that.
Yeah, well, and we see sort of a weird time shit going on, or I don't know if it's a time shit or it's like flashback shit. Whatever it is, we see him being fitted with like the armor and being in kind of a dazed state in there.
Yeah, it's time stuff because they later talk about how the zone is like being torn apart, and as a result, like you have windows into the past and future.
It kind of reminds me of in conceptual light speed travel. Technically, you could see events that happened in the past if you go far enough away. Like if you go a few light seconds away, you would see yourself jumping to that point a few seconds before.
Yeah.
Also, King Acorn's body is very weirdly scaled.
Yeah, he's super tall. He's so big.
Yeah, once he's out of the armor in later issues, he looks perfectly normal.
It's the SWATbot suits all over again.
Oh god, SWATbot suits.
Yeah, probably. I don't remember. He looked relatively similar in the earlier issue that Mowini drew, yeah? So it's not just Kyle Hunter.
Yes, I think so.
And I suppose I can't blame anything. I was going to blame Kyle Hunter for not knowing how to draw Sonic's head from behind, but I don't think any of the artists know how to do that except maybe Spazion.
Yeah.
He's got like one big quill and then a bunch of like fins on the side. It's so weird. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of sort of filler, not filler exactly, but there's a lot of not especially important action where they're just trying to get the king into a state that they can grab him, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of weirdness, but at least it's weirdness with a purpose. Again, I'll give them credit where credit is due, I suppose.
It's not padding for the issue. It actually has like plot relevance.
Yeah, because they do, by the end, they do indeed get the king back.
Yeah.
And there's no but to that. There's no sad AM moment where like, oh, he's gonna turn to Crystal and he has to go back. Nope. I mean, he is going to turn to Crystal, but he doesn't have to go back.
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, but there's one cell on here with King's face. I'm pretty sure his eyes are pointing in different directions.
Oh yeah, that look is odd.
It's a pretty good face.
It's hard to draw.
Well, I feel like if your characters... No, I was going to say if your characters don't have any kind of black part of their eye, it's kind of hard to really portray where they're looking. But at the top of the page, you see Jeffrey, and he doesn't have any black parts of his eye, and you can very much tell what he's looking at. I think it's just Sally and her dad.
And hey, it's like we haven't really mentioned Jeffrey here. This is easily his least infuriating appearance. He fights with Sonic at the start, but after that he's mostly helpful.
Yeah, it's just every time I see him, I just get violently uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm not saying that this is all goody-goody. I'm just saying that he's not that bad so far.
No, this issue, he's not that bad. He could be a lot worse.
No, yeah, for sure. I considered making a note, and I'm like, it's Jeffrey again, but like, it's Jeffrey again. Like,
that is one of my
nothing notable.
That is literally one of my notes, but I didn't feel like it was necessary to bring up, to be honest.
So back to the fact that we mentioned a few times. So the king is back. I think it's a little strange because in this issue they make a point to like try to go into the backstory a little bit of how the king got into the zone of silence, but he's just out of there. So it's like, is that gonna just be dropped? Maybe not. I honestly don't remember for sure 100%. But
whether he stays out of there or what?
Well, like they were building like, background for like, how so the gray creatures crown him as their ruler for some reason. What's up with that? Why would they just see a regular random person floating in the void and be like, yes, you will be our ruler now? Like,
I see.
Since they're out of the picture, I assume. I mean, I think we do go back to the zone of silence. I don't remember what we do there.
The zone of silence is not gone for good. I think these guys are mostly irrelevant from here on out, though, so they mostly do drop the crowning him their king thing.
Okay, well, yeah, it's odd they drop those details in if they don't follow up on them.
Well, the concept of the zone of silence feels more just like something like the Phantom Zone from Superman.
Well, it doesn't have to be anything big, but they put these weird characters in.
No, I would prefer it if they're going to show those characters that, let's get an actual explanation of why they were crowning King Acorn their ruler. But for all intents and purposes, the Zone of Silence really just feels like plot prison.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
No, that makes sense. It came off more like that in Sad AM, though, because in there it was literally just like crystals in a void, and it was just the king and Naugus.
Right.
There wasn't any other nonsense going on.
Right. In Sad AM, it feels a little more like the Phantom Zone. That's true.
True, but yeah.
No, we can forget about Art. He's never going to appear in anything else.
When Jeffrey, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but when Jeffrey first showed up, I thought he was going to be our Ari equivalent.
That would have been better.
Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
But no, in Sad AM, it's a lot more plot prison, but here it's plot prison with mild lore.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the difference is they wanted to stretch it out over multiple issues,
right?
Whereas, let's add some other random junk in here, and then not follow up on it.
And if they're going to have that random junk, personally, I'd want to have some explanation of what the fuck it is. Yeah. But I also don't hold the writers of these comics to very high regard at this point.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but they have not wooed me. Actually, they've sort of wooed me, but that's for later issues.
Well, you don't have to worry about it, because Penders is, supposedly deleting his Twitter soon, so...
I saw you mention that.
He's not going to be able to respond too harshly to you anyway.
One of us should try to infiltrate his Discord.
You could do that if you like. I'm not going to do that.
Maybe he'll make a Mastodon.
Anyway, our second comic book of the night is not a Sonic issue, but it may as well be, because there is a 3-part miniseries here called Sonic Quest: The Death Egg Saga.
I really like this. It does, and I really like the covers on all 3 of these issues.
Yeah, they're good old-fashioned Sonic focus is the word I'd use. They don't have anything that looks out of place.
Yeah, they're very Sonic-y. We got the nice Sega Genesis or Game Gear.
They both had side spines like that.
Okay.
They look like game covers.
I'm pretty sure Game Gear had the purple side spine. I think issue 3 has a red one. Yeah. Issue 3's got like a late era Genesis one, and I think issue 2 is mid era Genesis. Anyway, I like the covers. They are fun.
Yeah. And our story for this first issue is Scrambled. Written by Gallagher, drawn by Manny Gallen. Actually, all 3 of these issues are written by Gallagher and drawn by Gallen. And he's starting to get better. He's definitely looking better than last time. But the king is in bad condition due to the effects of the Zone of Silence, and Sonic and Tails are assigned to find rings that will help alleviate his condition. However, they're caught off guard when a flying fortress is stealing all the rings. It's the Death Egg, which can supposedly roboticize all of Mobius at once.
So, first of all, you mentioned the name Scrambled. I like all of these issues have egg-related names: Scrambled, Poached, Over Easy. It's amazing. Secondly, you mentioned the art. This is actually the first time where I'm like, actually, this art even looks weird to me. So I would have to disagree. Like, this stands out to me for some reason. It's the faces on these characters. They're all so wrong.
The faces feel more like standard comic book fare than Sonic fare.
They're a little weird. I guess I was thinking it's more consistent than last time, although I say that looking at this first panel with Sonic and Jeffrey jumping at each other, Sonic's face definitely looks weird, and then on the next page it looks a different kind of weird. So maybe you're right. Certainly, like, Snively is definitely the weirdest looking character so far.
I always give a pass to, you mentioned Robotnik, and Snively too, though maybe to a lesser degree. I don't care if they ever look weird, because they're weird characters.
That makes sense for them.
I don't know. It bothers me less than it did in the first one with Gallen. But yeah, anyway, we can have differing opinions. So yeah, that's is why I said, the king will become crystals, is because it happens the very next comic book to be released. He's turning gemmy.
Yep.
I like that on the first scene we see him in the comic, the crystals haven't quite gone past his muzzle yet, except for his nose for some reason.
He had it bedazzled.
Right. So, for some reason, the start of this story, the writers decide this comic is like, one of those super long-running epics. And you just can't possibly understand it unless you know every single little thing that's happened over the past, 10 issues. So they recap, everything. It's insane how many... They talk about, Supersonic Hyper Knuckles, obviously Mecha Madness, and when they retrieve the king and all that. That's more recent, but... And they even redraw scenes, and it's just crazy. Sally just spent so long explaining it to Jeffrey, I think.
I would assume
I don't
so,
know why
because he
they
wasn't
felt the
there
need for that, though.
Well, I would think that Jeffrey would know.
He wasn't there, but he seems like he'd probably keep tabs.
Fair.
Yeah, it's like is like the Supersonic and Hyper Knuckles, or maybe the Lake of Rings. Is that all just so that we know what rings are?
I mean, these comics do like re-explaining things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just several in a row. It's a little more than I usually expect.
It's very intense.
Yeah, the issue doesn't really start until the second part with Robotnik and Snively.
Yeah.
And Gallen just isn't quite sure how to draw these guys yet.
It works out for them, though, because Robotnik definitely should look a little odd, and Snively is just weirdly proportioned.
I guarantee that Gallen is going to find his footing and become a pretty good artist, especially on the Knuckles comics.
Yeah.
But Sonic and Tails basically find the Lake of Rings, but it's encased in a big dome that then opens up and has all its rings sucked out by a tube.
So, yeah, unless I'm forgetting something, I think this is the first time in the comics that Robotnik tries to make use of the rings himself.
Yes, I think so.
I don't remember any other times, yeah.
I remember he did that in SatAM, but not in the comics. So, that's cool, I suppose. Seems like an obvious move. Another thing is, so Robotnik was going up to the Death Egg, right, and leaving Robotropolis behind, and what is Snively doing? You're better than this, my friend. He's just he's gone. Well, time to mess around and just get massages and nice drinks and stuff and not repair Robotropolis or anything.
Well,
I get why
Snively-
he wouldn't do what Robotnik tells him to, but surely he would be plotting or something. But
Yeah.
Robotnik is coming back. Like, this is not going to work out for you. And spoilers, it doesn't.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of like throwing a house party while your parents are away. and just like not even considering what it'll look like when they get back, because it's not that he's like, oh, I'm gonna have a bath and I'm gonna eat candy or whatever. It's specifically that he wants to get a Robotnik uniform and change the signs on Robotropolis to say Snivopolis. Like, he's just gonna see that, man. If you want to relax,
Yeah.
I get it. But
Yeah, I forgot about that bit. Yeah, that specific detail comes back to get him.
if Robotnik didn't tell you to do anything, all you have to do is make sure Robotropolis looks the same as when he left it, and then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Anyway, for some reason, Robotnik's operation for the getting up the Death Egg, like powering it up and making it usable, he calls it Operation Operational. Like, what?
He's not a creative namer, although
Yeah,
usually he
well-
is. So I guess that's not a good point to make.
I mean, his names usually aren't necessarily super impressive, but they're usually not joke names like that. Well, I don't know. It doesn't seem like him to me.
No, it doesn't. I agree.
I mean, this is SAGA, but the Doomsday Project contrasts greatly with that.
Maybe he should have the tube that sucks up all the rings and tails, incidentally. Maybe he should have named that the umbilicus. Remember that from the Karhim story?
I knew you were going to reference that, and I do, but only because you pointed it out. I like when
The
Tails
Death Egg
getting
becomes the
sucked
Death
up, though.
Preg.
Stop
That's
it!
terrible.
I'm gonna
Jesus.
resuming previous statement.
Thank
I
you.
like when Tails is trying to not get sucked up that he's grabbing the edge of the frame. I always like when they do silly things with the drawings like that.
The rest of this comic, like, Sonic gets attacked by Carl Condor, a character we've never seen up to this point, but it's important that he got roboticized.
He's an important guy.
Well, I mean, just
He's-
because he attacks Sonic and then actually helps him inadvertently get to the Death Egg.
I just mean, like, Sonic's like, oh man, it's this guy who's important that I'm trying to meet. Like, if this had been like the Eagle guy, the old guy from early on in
Oh,
the series,
yes.
and he'd been roboticized, it's like I would have
yeah.
felt a lot for him, but I would have thought that would have been better.
We haven't heard of a single one of these bastards.
Yeah, but Eggman is up on his battle station and setting everything up so that we can finally reveal the Death Egg. And the shot of it is great, although it is significantly more egg-shaped in this than it is in the games.
I like that though because it's obviously a ripoff of the Death Star, but there's this drawing near the start where they have a drawing of it, and the way it's cut, it looks just like the Death Star, like exactly, and it kind of bugs me. So I like that they differentiate it a little bit.
I suppose, yeah. Anyway, all that being said, I just noticed the spine on the covers actually changes color for each issue.
Yeah. I mentioned that when I brought up the covers.
Oh, I guess I'm just a huge dumbass then. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, but you didn't hear from me.
Sonic Quest number 2, motherfuckers. We got Knuckles here.
Yeah, just suddenly.
You got to show that Knuckles is in it. I mean, that'd be cool if I was a kid and I was.
Yeah,
looking at
Knuckles.
the comic.
Having Knuckles is definitely a big selling point.
He's pretty high up. I don't know how he got there.
He
Because I
jumped
think
off of a
throughout this
really
whole
tall
story, I
building.
don't think Knuckles actually goes on the Death Egg.
He jumped off of a really
That-
tall building,
True.
and he did his best to glide over.
Although, I suppose now that I'm thinking about it, we never had a Death Egg before this point in the comics, which makes this the third and final piece of Sonic 3 and Knuckles to make it into this comic. But in Sonic 3 and Knuckles never went on the Death Egg in that either.
Yeah.
These covers have never been all that accurate.
No, that's,
Well, that
that's a
means that-
very minor thing. It's like the
Well,
fact
that
that
doesn't
he's
mean,
there,
though, that this
that's
is
not
a-
a big deal.
That does mean that this is a stealth Sonic 3 and Knuckles adaptation.
Thank you, Bruce.
Or stealth?
So at the start of this, they do another recappy thing. This for the previous issue, that makes sense. They're directly linked. But they do another like meta humor thing where it's like, meanwhile in Robotropolis, and the robot says incorrect. I mean, meanwhile in Snivopolis. I love that.
snivelly with his wide ass, not wide, but his like he has a very bony face.
Yeah, I always thought that was his neck that his mouth was on.
I don't know how his chin. I don't want to think too hard about it. It's gonna hurt. Poached, written by Gallagher and drawn by Gallen, of course. Tails goes undercover on the Death Egg and discovers Robotnik's plot to steal Angel Island's Chaos Emeralds. Of course it is. Meanwhile, Sonic and Knuckles desperately try to hold off Robotnik's forces, only for Robotnik to ram the flying fortress into the island himself.
I guess since you just brought that up, let's just skip to that part for a minute. That is like such an insane play. Like
That's 1,000 IQ play.
Man, I never saw when Robotnik is like, "Oh, you spoiled my Burrobots. Okay, I'm just gonna ram the entire Death Egg into the island." Like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, if my plan can't work, then no one gets to live.
I think it's an interesting version of Sonic 3's thing, because in Sonic 3, you knock the Death Egg down in launch base, or no, you knock it down in Sonic 2, and it lands on Angel Island, and that's what knocks it into the ocean. But here he's doing that on purpose, because I guess he's just crazy.
I don't think you have to guess about that.
Okay, yeah.
He seems crazier than usual. That seems a little over the top.
Well,
but then apparently,
I think it's safe to say that Robotnik is getting very desperate.
Well,
Yes.
no, it's a desperate move.
Yeah.
But then apparently the magic rings, because those things can do whatever the heck the writers want, like just completely defy physics. And yeah, I can just crash the Death Egg into the Angel Island. It's fine. I'll be fine. And Angel Island takes minimal damage too.
Also, it's funny that you brought up the SWATbot suits.
Yes.
Yeah,
early on
I
here.
knew that was gonna come up.
Okay, so Tails does say, I can work it from inside like a puppet when he does it, which implies to me that those aren't his real arms that he's moving. But how does that work? There's just handles in there?
It's like Pseudosonic.
No, it's not!
So this will come up again in this arc, and I think even more egregiously. But yeah, I don't know what's up with that or how that works.
It just looks weird, even if you say he is puppeting it.
He's just very smart. He knows how to make it work.
We're getting to see more of early smart Tails.
Yeah.
I have no problem with Tails taking an active role in things.
He deserves to take more of an active role, but a lot of the other writers just don't want to give him that active role.
Yeah, I suppose
yeah.
if nothing else, Gallagher does seem to like using Tails for stuff.
I can appreciate that because I like Tails. Is fun. He is
He's
a
a
nice
good dog.
boy. Sure.
I always have to point out minor details that are just neat. There's a clever bit of art here where Robotnik is explaining his plan. As you mentioned, he wants to steal the Chaos Emerald from the floating island. And as he's saying that, they change the background to the Chaos Emerald chamber on Angel Island, which I like that. Neat touch.
Pretty clever.
Mm.
I don't know. I just realized this because Sonic uses his CD figure 8 maneuver in this, and I realized every time Sonic has used this, the editor has had to say, "Oh, hey, remember this maneuver from way back in the CD special? Like,
Sonic
it's
also-
just a move. Why do you need to note when he first used it? That's not an important thing you're missing."
Yeah, and Sonic also has to constantly bring up, "Oh, I'm going to use the super peel out now."
Also, the peel out, it's just going fast. It's just him being really fast.
It's also just a less good spin dash.
I mean, in the context of CD, the original release, where the spin dash in that game absolutely sucks, I understand it.
Okay, yeah, but like the version that we played.
Yeah, when it's like, here apparently it can make him hover?
Well, we have seen this Sonic be like ridiculously overpowered plenty of times already.
Oh no,
It's just
100%.
a Yoshi flutter jump.
Yeah, so I mean, anytime he does something that seems to defy physics, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Also, literally every time anyone uses the word zone, the editor has to say it's just like the zones in the video games. Like,
yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I heard that the
Thanks for
first
the
10
reminder.
times.
Thanks for the reminder, guys. Really need you to let me know.
Especially when it's going to be invalidated by later issues. I mean, they couldn't have known that, but... Anyway, we get some of the chaotics where they get to fight some big Burrobots.
I was shocked actually to be like, wait, so Archimedes is now just part of the chaotics? He doesn't seem like the kind of dude to be like, yeah, I'll join your group. I'm a regular now.
He does
He
shoot
just kind of hangs
fire.
around.
No, I'm not saying he's not useful to have,
No,
but after being such an elusive figure, like, okay, now I'm just here.
Well, we're
that's
we're
the
placing.
question. Why did he feel need to be? Why I don't remember if he explained why he felt like he needed to be so elusive when he's supposed to be Knuckles' partner.
So usually the whole story of the Fire Ants is they work in the background and support the echidnas from
Right.
behind the
But
scenes.
the thing is,
But
but
now
the Guardian's partner, it doesn't seem like that they're supposed to do that though. They seem like they're supposed to actually be like outright there with them.
Oh, so Archimedes is special because he's the leader of the Fire Ants. The other ones can stay and be sneaky, but he can
Yeah.
breathe fire in your face. I guess
Well, and
that
also because Knuckles is the Guardian, and there's some stuff with the previous Guardians where they're also supposed to work in the background, maybe with the ants. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
The point
But, like-
is, it's weird and feels inconsistent.
Joys of having multiple writers who probably aren't talking to each other.
Inconsistent, like SBO's size. If you look at the panel where they're fighting all the Burrowbots, SBO is gigantic compared to the one that they're fighting.
I don't remember
Also,
which one it was.
once again, Charmy's size being really inconsistent. He's apparently big enough to throw coconuts, and like them not be the size of him.
Yeah, they had no idea what they were doing. But yeah, finally we get to see Dr. Robotnik ram the Death Egg into the island, and I'm just noticing
Hell yeah.
now, it's circular here, it's not eggular.
Oh, darn.
I'm also just now noticing that Robotnik has furry dice.
I actually
Well,
kind of
yeah.
like that, that's funny.
No, that's a nice little detail.
That's very in character for this Robotnik.
100%. I just love the odd mix of sometimes legitimately terrible and then also just silly.
Also, yeah, I guess Knuckles, like, jumps off the island and glides, but it really does look like he's like Dragon Ball Z, just key floating next to the island as it's getting pushed down. And he leaves all his friends behind there, like, they could be in
It's
danger,
fine.
but nah, I gotta get this wide-angle shot.
They'll be fine. Don't worry.
So, Sonic Quest number 3, look, it's the Sonic and Knuckles title screen.
Yeah,
So you did say you like these covers.
I
and
do.
Fair, but what's like Knuckles looks like he's there. Like, is this the right pose that I'm supposed to be standing in? That's the look on his face.
Yeah, he looks uncertain. He's like, is this what's going on right now?
I mean, Knuckles is basically like a country bumpkin who has barely any experience with the world outside of Angel Island. So,
Yeah, that's why his weakness is girls.
oof.
Right.
Actually, Knuckles has interacted with all of, like, one woman at this point in the comic, and that's Sally.
Yeah, he didn't actually interact with Bunny in Mecha Madness. Bunny was busy being like unconscious.
Yep.
Anyway, over easy, Gallagher and Gallon. Sonic and Tails regroup on the Death Egg and work together to battle Robotnik, setting the fortress to explode in the process. Robotnik and Sonic's final showdown is cut short, however, and the two escape to their own home bases. Sonic does manage to get rings for the king, though.
I like that Sonic didn't forget to get the rings.
I like that Sonic beats up Tails in the SWATbot suit, but Tails does not get, like, set on an angry testosterone journey like last time.
Tails
Right.
doesn't have his emo phase.
Yeah, it was just a phase.
Sonic's
So-
also got very noodly limbs during that fight.
Indeed.
I know that it's a trope and whatever, easily destroyable robots that really are not as good as I would expect robots to be. But it's still jarring when Sonic attacks Tails initially in the swap out suit. He's like, whoa, pretty fast reflexes for a robot. Like, robots should be able to react quickly.
You know,
That's kind of what
feel,
these ones are for.
I feel like Robotnik pumps enough of these out that they're just not very high quality.
He
Well,
does take pride in
mm.
not being efficient.
Well, that's more for just environmental damage.
Yeah, I know. But... Anyway, we blow up some computers, but Robotnik escapes to a different control room.
Tails shoots at Robotnik.
Tails with a gun, the movie.
Yep.
The Tails mod for Shadow the Hedgehog.
I like so Robotnik escapes to a different control room and he appears on the screen and Sonic says, "Can't we get the Chili Dog channel on this rig?" What is the Chili Dog
As
channel?
usual. It's the channel where they have like that horrifying food show where everyone was dressed up as food. Sonic the Chili Dog.
God.
Oh yeah.
God.
I mean, that's at least something. I'm just imagining like oh, they come out with the pizza channel and it's all just footage of pizza, not even like Pizza Hut commercials, voiced by Roger Craig Smith, but just footage of pizza.
You know what? I'd watch that channel.
Diabetes channel. So anyway, Robotnik 6 Silver Sonic on them.
So, gonna be honest, it's pretty weak design. Like, this might even be the weakest, like, in my opinion, Sonic robot we've seen in the comics. It's different from the games, which looks good. It's just it's just like pure silver, and there's not really a whole much to it.
Well, it's very generic mecha with Sonic's head on it.
It's meant to be the Sonic 2 Mecha Sonic, and it kind of looks like that one, but that one had the important difference of like turning into a buzzsaw and doing the spin attack at you, and it also only had one sort of Cyclops eye. Whereas this is the generic idea of robotic Sonic, where
he's also enormous for no reason other than Robotnik's overcompensating.
No, I mean, totally. So I never understood what the point was of Sonic robots. I'll forgive the original Sonic 2 Mecha Sonic because it was like a rough first try. But the rest of them that are they just look like Sonic, but they don't fight much like Sonic, or they're really big bulky or whatever. Right. Yeah, like I don't get the point of that. Just make a different robot.
Right. Yeah, because especially because Metal proves that a robot that fights like Sonic is a formidable foe.
Much more than this. This one's taken out in like 2 pages.
Yes, exactly. This thing is useless. Sonic just shorts it out.
So I guess if we can move on to that part, he shorts it out so that literally the whole reason they brought this thing into the comic was so that Sonic could take control of it, which Tails doing that, I mean, he's Tails, but like he's just like, oh, I'm just gonna do what Tails does. Like, he didn't have Tails help him. He's just like, oh, it's easy. You just take control robots like that. Like, no.
And it's like, where is Sonic supposed to be inside this thing? Because Tails, you can clearly see, he gets inside the chest part of it and puts the head over the top of his head. But Mecha Sonic is, like, the torso is not big enough for Sonic to fit inside alone. The head is not big enough for Sonic to fit inside alone.
Yeah, you could ask the same thing about the SWAT bots as well. Why are they apparently hollow inside so Tails can fuck around in it?
That's the reason. It's so Tails can use it.
Well, yeah, it's so we can get weird Mobians and fucking SWAT bot suits.
You can get a mech battle this way with Robotnik's amazing and very cool and not lame at all armor, the exoskeleton.
So I am torn on this. On the one hand, it looks absurd, and I love it. Like, this is so stupid. He just made a suit that looks like the Death Egg, and yes, good job, Robotnik. You're always ridiculous, and I love when you are. On the other hand, it cheats us out of the Death Egg robot, which is not cool.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, because a Mecha Sonic fighting an even bigger Death Egg robot would almost justify the Silver Sonic thing.
That would be pretty cool. We have giant Silver Sonic fighting an even bigger Mecha Sonic, but like...
Because then it's just Mecha Kaiju battles.
I said Mecha Sonic instead of Death Egg Robo.
My thing with the Eggman armor is, I like that he's finally using the rocket boots a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's true.
And B, it doesn't look all that nice to me. I just don't think it's very visually pleasing.
I mean...
where I like when Eggman... Even if he has something absurd, I like when he has something that's also kind of cool.
So the absurd factor does fit in line with this Eggman, but I think the problem is, it doesn't even look absurd to me. It just looks more... looks kind of slapped together.
I'm looking at the panel where the big 2-page spread of him fighting Silver Sonic, and I think it's the way the eyes look, is that in all the previous ones the eyes are exactly the same as the eyes on the Death Egg, but in this panel specifically they look more like Robotnik's normal eyes, and I think that they just did that, I would have been happier with it. Although this panel also gives him weird, like, you can see his like hairy chin.
Yeah, he has stubble on his chin.
I forgot to shave today.
Yeah, he's clean shaven in every other scene.
Yeah, he's not.
He's someone who should groom his mustache, but nothing else. Yeah.
No, Robotnik very seems like he the kind of person who would shave every other inch of his body except for the mustache.
I hate that we also, at the end here, because spoiler alert, the battle goes as much as you could possibly expect. Robotnik gets away, they get rings, they get back home. I hate that we can also answer what the rest of his body hair looks like, because he drops through the fucking ceiling in Robotropolis onto Snively, and you can see, like, bits where the costume has been torn off, and you can see his hairy nipple through it. It's like, oh!
It reminds me of George Costanza.
Don't like it.
Also,
Anyway.
It feels very in character that the exoskeleton is actually just like clearly like spandex or something. It's not actually a metal.
He was doing it for the aesthetic.
Yeah, it's the superhero aesthetic or supervillain aesthetic. Also, why does Robotnik have like a New York stockbroker CEO penthouse office?
Yeah, and we mentioned as much, but yeah, Snively, predictably, nothing good came of his messing around. Good job.
Nothing good or bad, frankly. He kind of did nothing at all.
Well, it was his whole. They jumped to it a few times across these issues. It was just a big old like joke.
Yeah, it's
The
just
whole point of him
Snively
messing around was
relaxing.
just for a joke.
Yeah,
It's just in sharp contrast to how he rolls later on.
I like on the last page though, right at the top, right as Robotnik's about to land on him, he looks like he's having a good snooze, and he feels like someone who would not get enough good sleep. So I can appreciate good sleep.
If you don't look at like his wiry hairs on his head, he looks like a cartoon caricature of Jeff Bezos.
You know what? You could say that even with the wiry hairs.
This is a little ways back, but as the Death Egg is going to explode, I have to applaud 10 out of 10 gobbledygook from Tails. When the antimatter matrix reaches a nucleonic dispersion chamber, this thing will be vapor.
We got a little bit of that Trekno babble.
So yeah, that's the Death Egg saga, everybody. Wasn't it amazing? Question mark.
But I remembered it being better.
Yeah, it was a little underwhelming. I had not read it until now. I'd seen a reference because it was in Select Book 3, I think, which I never got. And so I was like curious about it, but honestly, not a whole lot to it.
Yeah, it's like the Death Egg is cool, but
well, it's like what of consequence really happened here? And it's like they got some
the
rings to help the king, which is a problem that was manufactured for this issue and pretty much this issue alone.
Yeah, it was really just manufactured for this little trilogy.
I think the problem is that the writers decided to split Sonic 3 Knuckles into more pieces than the game was split into.
Ooh.
Yeah. But it comes together and it's like, you know, we already didn't like the Sonic and Knuckles special very much.
Yeah.
And the Sonic 3 issue, you know, was at a point in the comic where it was mostly gags. So it's like we really didn't have a great complete version of this story in any scenario.
Yeah.
I've heard that the Sonic the comic version of Sonic 3 is a lot better, so...
Well, I'm going to hold you to your word on that.
I'm excited to get to it, albeit further down the line.
You know, not that much farther down the line for us at the moment, at least.
In any case, we still have one issue left today, which is Sonic number 42. I love this cover, it's classic.
Sally doing on this cover, though?
I was about to say, can you explain that pose to me?
I like this cover, it's a classic. No idea what's going on with Sally. Her neck is backwards, she's kicking the air.
The rest of them look good. Sally's over here doing some, like, 80s or 70s kung fu movie shit.
Sally Chan.
That sounds familiar from something else, but I don't know what, so I'm not going to say.
No, I was just saying Jackie Chan, but with Sally's name.
Oh.
Sally Chan is what you call her in the anime version.
Oh, God.
Moving along from that terrifying implication, the story is, in every kingdom there must exist a little chaos. Written by Kent Taylor, who is Scott Fulop, and drawn by Art Mawhinney, who it feels like we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because they haven't been here today.
Once again, the first thing Sonic and Knuckles seem to do when they see each other is beat the shit out of each other.
Oh, of course.
Wait, are you going to summarize the story?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right, I forgot.
Sonic and Knuckles
Company-
fighting is more important.
Sonic and company scramble to get rings and Chaos Emeralds in an effort to cure the king or find his crown, which supposedly has magic powers. And that's
Okay,
why
yeah.
they're fighting Knuckles.
There wasn't a whole lot anyway.
I mean, yeah, I know why they're fighting, but I still think it's funny that I think we've even talked about this previously, that literally every time Sonic and Knuckles see each other, they just immediately start beating the crap out of each other.
It's,
Yeah, well, and it's stupid because later in this story, Uncle Chuck, who's apparently is also a great negotiator, among other things, calls up Knuckles, and the Knuckles is like, "Yeah, I'll help you, fine." Which makes me think that Sonic just ran over and is like, "Emerald, right over here. I'm grabbing it," and didn't even like ask or anything.
I mean, it does seem like that's what Sonic did.
he's a bit of a tool, isn't he?
It very much seems like if Sonic had just explained the situation, Knuckles would have been willing to help.
So
Which, oh boy, manufactured drama.
there are so many editor's notes at the beginning of the story advertising the Sonic Quest miniseries. It's kind of pathetic. Like, are you that desperate to get people to buy your comics?
Yeah, they literally make a joke about how much they're referencing Sonic Quest, and then they keep doing it afterwards. Like, I'm
You know,
not gonna see,
The editor notes were kind of funny at first, but to be honest, a lot of them are not even that entertaining anymore.
No, I agree. They've decreased in quality for sure. Yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason, Sonic is just the worst in this issue in many respects. He's super rude to Tails multiple times. I mean, Tails like blabbers about the bad things Sonic did, which, like, I mean, you brought that on yourself. He's understandably angry about that, but also there's a bit where like Tails misreads Limbo as Jimbo, and he's like, "Oh, you know, that's Limbo, Dumbo," like channeling Sonic the comic or something.
Mm.
Yeah, Sonic is just a when that goes along with him just being like trying to steal Knuckles' Chaos Emerald for real. Like Robotnik didn't even need to lie at this point.
That's true.
Yeah,
And it's like throughout this whole thing, like we're trying to get rings, we're trying to get emeralds, and it all amounts to basically nothing because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
yeah.
So our good friends, the spy network, they become traitors. Apparently, that's a notable thing, I guess. So we don't have to see them anymore.
Sleuth Doggy Dog is a bad guy.
Oh
Don't
no!
you guys care that Sleuth Doggy Dog?
Freddy is robot.
Honestly,
so
I
sad.
care more about the fact that the chili on Sonic's chili dogs is fucking pink than any of the spy network being traitors.
I care more about
Pepto-Bismol
the
chili.
fact that
Oh god.
Sonic can somehow create tornadoes with his hands.
It's he vibrates the molecules in his hands fast enough.
This is the definition of writing by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, kind of.
Like in just every factor, it's like we have this whole issue about getting rings and Chaos Emeralds, and the ultimate revelation we come to is, nope, we need the magic crown, but also we can't get the crown, so we need the magic sword to get the crown.
We really needed an entire issue just for that.
It's not one of the better ones, is it?
Well, it's not the whole issue technically.
No,
There's
the
one
second
additional
story here is same problem as Tails. Knuckles' quest, where Knuckles and Tails search for a Thayer, hoping to gain some direction in the quest for the Sword of Acorns, which that means that Penders and Taylor wrote this together, and apparently Brian Thomas helped out on art, but I'm not sure where. Mostly still looks like Mawini.
To be honest, this feels like less of a second story and more of just a continuation of the story, of the main story.
And hey, it's Penders collaborating with someone other than Kantrovich.
Well, I'm still not convinced is that an actual person.
Well, he's not on the series after this point, I'm pretty sure, so maybe he was retired as a persona.
More for my conspiracy theory.
Yeah, so what is this? Like, I get the unlikable main character, whatever, but that's not what Sonic is about typically. Why is Knuckles? He's so rude to Tails in this one. Like, he's like, "Oh, you're bringing me on a wild goose chase. Oh, you you didn't ask the right question to the ancient walkers. And then at the end, when Tails gets results, he doesn't even say thank you. He's like, nah, I'm off on my own now.
I think that the signs of Pender's general disinterest in Sonic, and especially just characters who he can't sort of manipulate to be what he wants the way he can with Knuckles, it's starting to shine through a little bit more, and we're going to see that as Sonic is written as more of a dickhead in some upcoming issues.
So I still can't seem to figure out why Pender's landed on Knuckles to be his.
Well, it's because he would keep submitting stories for Sonic, and Sega would reject them. Then he would submit them for Knuckles, and they would accept them.
Really?
Yeah, Sega's standards were just looser with Knuckles than Sonic, and people wanted to see more Knuckles anyway.
Well, I mean, I can understand wanting to see more Knuckles because, the idea of learning more about Echidna society is interesting, and you learn that through Knuckles.
I do like that. I think a lot of the Echidna lore is interesting. But the problem is, because it's all through Knuckles, it's at the cost. It's at a great cost. As you've pointed out before, I think Devin mainly pointed out that because Penders writes a lot of Knuckles stories, he becomes like the way Penders writes, just tons of talking, and he just spouts exposition, and he gets like watered down sort of as a character sometimes. And bent for the plot.
I think Knuckles is a difficult character to get right because he's not supposed to be a complete idiot, but he's also not supposed to be like extremely smart. He's supposed to be determined and stubborn and kind of temperamental sometimes. Under Penders, he's just kind of a dry chode. And,
under Penders, he just comes off as a vessel to rant about Echidna backgrounds, or the background of Echidna society.
Basically.
And there's weird stuff with this, too, because we've got the Christian undertones of the Edmund Dimitri story, which Knuckles is taking seriously throughout this story, but when they get to Aether, he treats the ancient Walker spirituality as a bunch of nonsense. Which, if you were trying to make a commentary on religion, that's technically, not completely inaccurate, but I don't think they're trying to do a commentary. I think they're just trying to make sure Knuckles is better.
I guess there's marketing reasons for it as well.
Yeah. So yeah, not a great issue, this one, I would say.
This is another kind of nothing issue, where it's like stuff happens, and it's technically lore important, but it doesn't feel important.
Yeah, it's like the biggest thing that happens in the main story is that Knuckles is sent on a quest that will be followed up in other stories. And I guess Sleuth Dog is technically a recurring villain, if you can believe that.
Yes, he is. That is
really?
true.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, he is.
I must have forgotten about that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, any lore important issue is probably going to be like, okay, you can bullet point the things that will matter in later issues. But ideally, how you get those bullet points is interesting, but it's kind of just like, no, they happen in the most boring way possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the journey, not the destination, but
when the journey is also boring.
Exactly. It's like last time we had the peak of the early comics, and today we have sort of a nice in-between where it's just a nice healthy shot of mediocrity, because next time on Deep Dive Zone, we have the opposite of a peak.
Oh boy.
Next time, we have 2 specials to discuss, which is like, that could spell something great. It doesn't, though, because the first issue that we're talking about next time is called Sonic Live.
Really ripping off the bandage right off the bat.
I'm not going to tell our watchers anything about Sonic Live if they haven't heard about it.
I would not want you to anyway. That needs to be experienced without any knowledge, or as little knowledge as possible.
And with that said, I think we're going to be done for tonight. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, or want to throttle us for having besmirched the good name of Sonic Live, the greatest comic book ever written, you can always reach us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter, assuming it still exists by the time this episode goes up. And if so, maybe I should make a Mastodon, or maybe a co-host, or maybe a Discord. I don't know, something. Have a great night, and we will see you next week.